start of the hike, which really is when you leave wherever you are to get to your destination, started off kind of on a rocky note. Not just for me, but for one of the other hikers. We had both had quite early morning flights and got to Pearson super early. So we didn't have a lot of sleep because if you're like me, you don't want to miss your alarm, so you're already not sleeping well. Just before my taxi is about to arrive, guess what? They delayed my flight 9 hours. And I had everything planned ahead, so I was supposed to land around noon, go to Costco and a couple of other places and get all the rest of my food stuff, and then be done with it and chill out and relax with my parents for a couple of days. Well, I waffled back and forth. I canceled my taxi, and then I decided, no, I'm gonna go to the airport anyways, because I knew that I had one of the first flights and there were multiple flights prior than 9 hours from then that I should be able to get on. I also called Air Canada at the moment I left my house. So as soon as I got to the counter, Air Canada picked up the phone. Air Canada helped me get a flight, but it was still, I believe, like 6 hours delayed in the end. And as I'm going through security, I turn around and I see Daniela, who's hiking the West Coast Trail with me, behind me, and her flight was supposed to be before mine. So it turned out her flight got all changed. Anyway, she did make her flight. We ended up hanging out, getting some coffee and getting her in line for her flight. And off she went while I then spent a lot of time in Pearson Airport. Thankfully, I had a book and my tablet. The women's soccer team was playing the finals, so I got the scarf. Definitely thank my mom right now, because when they lost my luggage, I had to go and buy a whole bunch of new luggage, and she came with me and helped me find all the stuff. And she also dropped me off at the Nanaimo ferry terminal to catch the bus. So thank you so much, Mom. I do appreciate it. I guess second time was the charm in this case, and I couldn't have done this, either of the West Coast Trail trips, without you. Hello, I'm recording from a cottage in the Eson area, which is near, I believe, Halliburton. I'm taking a few days with some friends and family leading into New Year's and getting out of the city. Just came back from hiking and picking up some maple syrup from Eson Creek, and I can't wait to try this for sure. This one will be coming home with me because I already made waffles this morning, and we're not having any other syrup related goodies on this trip. So how did I get to the West Coast Trail? On August 1st, I was dropped off at the Nanaimo ferry terminal, and the bus that picked me up was like a small minivan type bus that is also the Nanaimo airporter. The rest of my group was in Victoria, and they just had to go around the corner, I think by the main bus terminal in Victoria, which is near Parliament. And they caught the bus, the West Coast Trail bus from there. The thought was that we would meet up in Cowichan Lake. That really didn't happen the way expected, as many things don't, but that's okay. The bus from Nanaimo went through Cowichan Lake and then stopped outside the Honeymoon Bay General Store. There is an outhouse there, and you can stop and get some food and some snacks if you want some kind of real food before having camp food for 7-ish days. It was there that I was told I would transfer onto another bus, and there was another minivan type bus. They loaded up my luggage and I hopped in the front. I was told that the back seats were taken, And before looking who was sitting in the bus or anything, was like, "Hello folks, I'm so happy to see you." And I look up and there isn't a single person on the bus that I recognize. It turned out they were a whole family and family friend group that was also doing the West Coast Trail. And there was another bus, a much larger bus, that was carrying more people from Victoria. Anyways, the people I was on this new bus with were fantastic, really super friendly group. It's soon after here that the road quality deteriorates. As you start going around, I think it's still Cowichan Lake area, it becomes a gravel road and then it becomes a washboard road. The road gets rougher and rougher, and it's like that for 2.5 hours. There was another stop along the way, maybe about an hour in, with some more outhouses. So we stopped there, and the bigger West Coast bus was also there at this point. I went onto the bus and checked and saw that my friends were there and asked if I could go on that bus so that I could be with them. And both bus drivers gave me kind of like a weird look. And I didn't know why. Like, why would it be strange that I want to sit with my friends? But anyways, I went and joined them, and I soon realized why I got such a peculiar look and some kind of questioning. And that's because the bus that I was on had shocks, and this bus did not feel like it had shocks. So you can see here I took some footage, and it went on like this for probably an hour and a half of just rattle, rattle, rattle. And amazingly enough, some people were sleeping through all of this. I don't know how that was even possible. But anyways, I guess it's part of the journey. West Coast Trail buses, they take you into the parking lot of the national park there. It's a small parking lot with limited parking, but I guess some hikers can leave a few vehicles there. I'm gonna guess it's a first come, first serve situation. So they dropped us off, and there is you walk down a little ways, there's an outhouse and then an A-frame. Can't check in right away. You have to wait till a certain time, and then the park office will open up and all the people who are there for orientation can register. One on our buses did, and then we waited around a little bit. So at that point, some of us we explored a little bit. You can take a path down to the beach, Pachena Bay Beach. And we also just ate some snacks and waited for orientation. And once orientation started, we all moved to sort of this like bench area, and our Parks Canada ranger went through all the things that they needed to go through, including tides and animals and all those things. So what they do is they give you a map, and on each of the maps they have a customized tide table for basically, I guess, the day before your hike or the day of that orientation for about 10 days after that. This is a copy of the West Coast Trail map that Parks Canada gives everyone. And on the inside, they attach the tide schedule for your time during your hike, and you will receive this at orientation. They tell you how to read the tide tables, and they go through some of the points on the map where you cannot pass and so forth. At that point, the family that I was on that bus, the second bus with, they took off and started doing the trail, and a few others as well. And then a few of us, we stayed at the Pachena Bay Campground, and there's a trail right off of the National Park grounds into the Pachena Bay Campground. We walked over, we found our campsite because I already knew the number, so we dropped our gear off there, and then we went on to the park office and checked in, verified that was our site, and then went back. Pachena campground is really nicely maintained. There's a ton of campsites. We were in the treed area because we have a hammock camper. So we set up our sites and then we asked the campground office about walking into town. They kind of gave us our directions and off we went. This is where we started. This is where the National Park office is. And we stayed at Pachena Campground right in here. When we walked into town, I guess we took this trail, or this road and trail, into Bamfield here. That you'll see the 75-kilometer mark. I highly recommend staying your first night in Pachena campground or the Bamfield area and exploring the little community as well as hitting that 75-kilometer hike, even though of course there's debate that the trail itself is actually more than 75 kilometers regardless of hitting that kilometer mark. But the hike into town is really nice. There's a trail and it has some signs. It's very nice. It goes through the forest. I found a whole bunch of salmon berries along the way, so that was a nice surprise. I love salmon berries. I wish they grew out here in Ontario. And then we got into town. We were under the impression, now I can't remember if the pub or the restaurant was supposed to be open. So the pub or the hotel has a pub, and then there's a little grocery store market that has a restaurant, and one of them was supposed to be open. But they do say that there's a bit of an unpredictability to both of these restaurants, and maybe because it was also the August long weekend, neither of them were open. We decided, well, that's okay, we'll just go to the market, we'll find some snacks, we'll make do. As we're going through the market and picking up, you know, potato chips and pop or whatever was grabbing our attention, I see this little hot food area, but it had like 2 items. So I said, oh, do you happen to have any other hot foods in the back? And he said, well, I happen to have 3 pizzas. I think 1 was a vegetarian and 2 were pepperoni, and we do have a vegetarian. I said, that's great. Please, I'd like both, 1 vegetarian and 1 pepperoni. Just hold that while I confirm with my group. So I confirmed with the group and we had that, because as soon as he told me about those pizzas, I sensed the other hikers' ears kind of perking up, thinking, oh, they'd like to have a pizza as well. So we ordered the pizzas. We still got some snacks, and then I think the wait was about 15-20 minutes. So we walked down to the dock. Dock is about 200 meters away, I think. It's just a short walk down the street from the market, and you also pass the hotel, which has the restaurant that wasn't open. And this is where all the action is. You can see all the boaters coming in and out, and Bamfield is split east and west, I believe, across the inlet. There is a ferry that takes you across, or we didn't see that ferry come in or out while we were there. There's a couple picnic tables, and it was just a beautiful area to hang out while we waited. Then it was at this point that I realized that somewhere along the way into Bamfield, probably while I stopped at the salmon berry bush, the battery of my camera had fallen out. That was a bit of a bummer. That meant I was left with my iPhone for photography and for video of this amazing trip. And it also meant that I had a little camera that was pretty much useless, but I had to carry on the trail the entire way. Luckily, though, Robert had brought a really nice camera with telephoto lens, and he took some great photos, which I will intermingle in the videos. Around 20 minutes after we picked up our pizzas, we brought the pizzas back to the dock, and we sat there and enjoyed the view, and our last non-dehydrated meal for a few days. I was at the market, I noticed there was a sign for a taxi on the counter where you pay for things. I took a photo of it and we decided that we would call the taxi to take us back to camp. When we called the taxi, he said, okay, I'll be there in a minute. He literally lives around the corner, as I imagine a lot of Bamfield people do. It's a very small community. And when he arrived, guess what? He was also a West Coast Trail bus, as it said so on his vehicle. He took us back, I think it was $10 per person. He drove us all the way to our campsite, which was really great because we actually were quite a ways in, closer to the national park entrance. And for the rest of the evening, we hung out on the beach, which was also lovely. Pachena Bay is a stunning place. For those who don't want to do the West Coast Trail but are looking for a secluded place to camp, this might be it for you as well. There's a lot of car camping to be done there. I also want to say the bathrooms, you have to get tokens for the shower, and we did not know this, and the office was closed. We didn't get our last proper shower that night. They did have a little bit of humor, and I think it's humor. I think they put these signs by the women's washroom on purpose. If you follow the Torch Hours Instagram, in July you may have noticed that I posted that at the beginning of my journey, Air Canada lost my luggage or left my luggage behind in Vancouver. Luckily I had air tagged my luggage, and without getting into all the details, I did get my luggage, which had my backpack and all my gear, and I was able to do the West Coast Trail. Definitely when you're doing something like this, I highly recommend leaving a few buffer days before you start the trail and air tagging or putting some kind of tracker on your luggage. Yeah, anyways, I made it. All was well.